The morning began quietly in Westbridge, a town so orderly it felt frozen in time. Lawns were trimmed, mailboxes painted, and the hum of daily life moved at a gentle, predictable rhythm. March had begun to hint at spring, though the chill of winter still clung to the air. On that morning, the sun crept over the rooftops, casting long, soft shadows across sidewalks, unaware of the darkness about to pierce the town's calm. Detective Marcus Henley sipped his coffee when the call came in. Evelyn Harper, a 36-year-old schoolteacher and single mother, had been found dead in her home. The initial report suggested an accidental fall. But something in Henley's chest told him this was no ordinary call. Evelyn was well known in the neighborhood, kind, dependable, always ready to help. A fall, the kind that ends in death? It didn't add up. Henley and his partner, Detective Laura Vance, arrived at the Harper residence. The house was immaculate, unnervingly so. The living room gleamed, everything appeared in order, yet the scene in the kitchen and staircase told a different story. Evelyn lay at the bottom of the stairs, one arm bent unnaturally, the other outstretched toward the railing. Henley's gaze lingered on the small details: a chair slightly askew in the hallway, a vase nudged from its usual spot, a faint smear of dirt on the carpeted steps. The medical examiner, Dr. Franklin O'Connor, had already examined the scene. At first glance, he said, "It looks like a classic fall. Broken ribs, head trauma. Consistent with tumbling downstairs." Henley didn't feel the closure that usually came with such an assessment. Small things were off. The position of the body, the lack of struggle marks on the carpet, the absence of fingerprints on the railing. His instincts whispered that someone had staged this. Neighbors were questioned. Most had seen nothing unusual. One elderly neighbor, however, mentioned seeing Thomas Keller, Evelyn's next-door neighbor, leaving unusually early that morning. It was a minor detail, but Henley and Vance noted it. The autopsy report the next day confirmed their suspicions. The angle of the head trauma didn't match a simple fall. There were defensive bruises on her forearms, faint scratches around her neck, and traces of a potent sedative in her system, administered without her knowledge. Henley and Vance exchanged a glance. This was no accident. Someone had made it look that way. They dug into Evelyn's life. She had been cautious, protective, but conflicts existed. Disputes with colleagues, disagreements with parents at school, minor quarrels, nothing suggesting murder. It was a conversation with her best friend, Claire, that revealed the first real lead. Evelyn had been worried about Richard Calloway, a man from her past. Charming on the surface, controlling and volatile beneath, Richard had not accepted their breakup years earlier. Evelyn had tried to cut all contact, but Richard's obsession had lingered. Finding Richard was not easy. He had left town without a trace. But digital breadcrumbs led detectives to a small town 20 miles away, where surveillance footage showed him at a hardware store at 7:42 a.m. on the morning of Evelyn's death. Overnight travel explained his presence near Westbridge early that day, unnoticed. A search of Richard's motel uncovered damning evidence: sedatives matching those found in Evelyn's system, detailed notes outlining the plan to enter her home, photographs of her taken surreptitiously, and step-by-step instructions labeled, ensuring she never leaves again. Piecing together that morning, Henley and Vance saw the crime unfold. Richard had arrived under the guise of returning a borrowed item. He laced her tea with a fast-acting sedative, waited for her to grow disoriented, and staged the fall down the stairs. Objects were subtly shifted to mimic an accident, but Henley's keen eye had already spotted inconsistencies: the chair, the vase, the faint dirt smear. Every small detail told the story the sedative tried to hide. The arrest was swift. Richard was found hiding at another motel, several counties away. He offered no resistance. During interrogation, he initially denied wrongdoing, careful with his words, but the pressure eventually fractured his calm. He admitted to entering Evelyn's house that morning, to administering the sedative, and to pushing her down the stairs. His motive was a toxic blend of obsession and rejection, a desire to regain control over someone who had dared to walk away. The trial captivated the town. The prosecution's case relied heavily on the meticulous investigative work of Henley and Vance, surveillance footage, digital traces, physical evidence, and the autopsy's revelations. Each piece built a damning portrait of premeditated murder, leaving little room for doubt. The jury convicted him on all counts. Evelyn's family struggled to reconcile the loss. Her son, Liam, only 8, would never see her grow up. And yet, amid the grief, there was relief: the person who had taken her life had been stopped, held accountable. But as Henley often reflected, there was no true closure. The routines of daily life, mundane, ordinary, familiar, could be shattered in a single morning. The house that had been a sanctuary had been transformed into a crime scene. And for those who had known Evelyn, the memory lingered, a reminder that danger sometimes wears the face of normalcy. Westbridge slowly returned to its quiet rhythm. Children rode bikes down sunlit streets. Neighbors waved over fences. Lawns were mowed. Life carried on. But for Henley, Vance, and everyone touched by Evelyn's story, the shadow of that morning remained. And somewhere, in the quiet corners of the town, the thought whispered itself like a warning: not every accident is accidental, and sometimes the darkness is closer than it seems.